Maria Gonzalez stepped out of the old bus and looked at the big iron gates in front of her. The morning sun was just coming up and she could see a huge house through the trees. She had never seen such a big place before. The house looked like something from a movie with its white walls and big windows. She checked her watch and saw it was 6 in the morning. She was early, but that was good because she always liked to be on time for work. She walked up to the small gate next to the big one and pressed the button. A voice came through the speaker asking who she was. Maria said her name and told them she was the new cleaning lady. The gate opened with a buzz and she walked up the long road to the house. Her feet hurt already from walking, but she kept going. She needed this job and she was not going to mess it up. Maria was 52 years old and had been cleaning houses for many years. She worked at 3 different places every week to make enough money. Her daughter Sofia was in college and Maria wanted to make sure she could pay for everything. Sofia was smart and Maria knew she would have a good future if she could finish school. That was all Maria cared about now. When she got to the front door, she rang the bell. A woman in a black dress opened it. The woman looked Maria up and down, like she was checking if she was good enough to be there. The woman said her name was Mrs. Patterson and she was the head of the house staff. She told Maria to follow her. And they walked through rooms that were bigger than Maria's whole apartment. Mrs. Patterson showed Maria where to find the cleaning supplies and told her which rooms she would clean each day. There were so many rooms that Maria wondered if she would ever learn them all. The kitchen was huge with shiny metal everywhere. The living rooms had furniture that looked like it cost more than Maria made in a year. Everything was perfect and clean already, but Mrs. Patterson said Mr. Sterling liked everything to be cleaned every day. Anyway, Mr. Sterling was the man who owned the house. Mrs. Patterson told Maria that he was very rich and had made his money with computers. She said he was important and Maria should stay out of his way when he was home. Maria nodded and said she understood. She had worked for rich people before and knew they did not like to see the help too much. After Mrs. Patterson left her alone, Maria started cleaning the first room. It was a big room with books on all the walls. She dusted every book and cleaned the big desk in the middle. The room smelled like old leather and wood polish. Maria liked the smell and thought it must be nice to have so many books to read. As she worked, she thought about Sofia. Her daughter was studying to be a teacher, and Maria was so proud of her. Sofia was the first person in their family to go to college. Maria's husband had died when Sofia was only 7, and since then Maria had worked every day to take care of them both. Sometimes she was so tired she could not think straight, but she never stopped working. Around 10 in the morning, Maria heard footsteps and voices coming from the main hall. She kept cleaning, but she could hear a man talking loudly to someone on the phone. The man sounded angry about something and was using words that Maria did not want to repeat. She figured this must be Mr. Sterling, and she made sure to stay quiet, so he would not notice her. When she finished the book room, Maria had to go through the main hall to get to the next room. She tried to walk quickly and quietly, but as she passed through, she saw something that made her stop. In the corner of the hall was the most beautiful piano she had ever seen. It was black and shiny and so big it looked like it could fill her whole apartment. She had never seen a real piano like this one before. Maria could not help but stop and look at it. The piano was perfect with not even one spot of dust on it. She could see her reflection in the shiny black wood. For just a moment she forgot where she was and reached out her hand toward the keys but stopped herself before she touched anything. That was when she heard the voice behind her. "What are you doing?" Maria turned around and saw a man in an expensive suit looking at her with angry eyes. He was tall with gray hair and a face that looked like he was always mad about something. She knew right away this was Mr. Sterling. "I am sorry, sir," Maria said quickly. "I was just cleaning and I saw the piano. I did not touch anything." She stepped back from the piano and held her cleaning cloth tighter. Mr. Sterling walked closer and looked her up and down the same way Mrs. Patterson had. He saw her old clothes and her hands that were rough from years of cleaning. He smiled, but it was not a nice smile. "You like my piano, do you?" he said. "I bet you have never seen anything like it before, have you?" Maria shook her head and said no, sir, she had not. Mr. Sterling laughed and said he thought so. He told her the piano cost more than most people made in 10 years. He said it was made by the best piano makers in the world and only very important. People had pianos like this one. People like you probably think this is just a big music box, he said with that mean smile. I bet you do not even know what kind of music a piano like this can play. Maria wanted to tell him that she knew about pianos, but she needed the job, so she just nodded and said, yes, sir. Mr. Sterling seemed to enjoy making her feel small. He walked around the piano, touching it like it was his favorite thing in the world. This piano has been played by some of the best musicians in the world, he said. Famous people come to my parties just to hear it played. Of course, someone like you would never understand music like that. Maria felt her face get hot, but she did not say anything. She had learned long ago that rich people sometimes like to make poor people feel bad, and the best thing to do was just let them talk. Mr. Sterling finally told her to get back to work and stop looking at things that were not for people like her. Maria said, yes, sir, again, and walked away to clean the next room. But as she worked, Maria kept thinking about the piano. She wondered who played it at the parties Mr. Sterling talked about. She wondered what kind of music they played and if the guests really enjoyed it or if they just pretended to. Most of all, she wondered what Mr. Sterling would think if he knew the truth about her and pianos. But that was something she would never tell anyone. That part of her life was over now. She was just Maria, the cleaning lady who needed to keep her job. 3 weeks had passed since Maria started working at Mr. Sterling's house. She had learned to stay out of his way, and he had not bothered her much since that first day at the piano. Maria did her work quietly and well. Mrs. Patterson seemed happy with her, and that was all that mattered. Maria needed this job, and she was not going to do anything to lose it. Every day when Maria walked through the main hall, she looked at the piano. She could not help herself. It was so beautiful, and she could tell it was a very good piano just by looking at it. Sometimes when no one was around, she would stop for just a few seconds to look at it closer. She never touched it, but she could. Imagine what the keys would feel like under her fingers. Mr. Sterling had parties at his house sometimes. Maria would come early on those days to help get everything ready. She would clean extra hard and help the other workers set up tables and chairs. During the parties, Maria had to stay in the kitchen or the back rooms, but she could hear the music and talking from the main hall. She wondered what kind of people came to these parties and what they talked about. On this Friday afternoon, Mrs. Patterson told Maria there would be a big party tomorrow night. She said Mr. Sterling's most important friends were coming and everything had to be perfect. Maria said she would come early to help with everything. Mrs. Patterson looked pleased and told Maria she was a good worker. Maria felt proud when she heard this because she always tried to do her best. Saturday came and Maria arrived at the house at 4 in the afternoon. The party would start at 7, so there was a lot to do. She helped clean all the rooms and set up tables with expensive dishes and glasses. The flowers were delivered and Maria helped put them in big vases around the house. Everything looked perfect, like something from a fancy magazine. At 6:30, the other workers told Maria to go to the kitchen and stay there until the party was over. She would help with cleaning up the dishes and making sure there was enough food and drinks for everyone. Maria went to the kitchen and put on her oldest clothes so she would not get anything dirty while she worked. Soon, Maria could hear cars coming up the long road to the house. Through the kitchen window, she could see big expensive cars dropping off people in fancy clothes. The men wore suits that looked like they cost more than Maria made in months. The women wore long dresses and jewelry that sparkled even from far away. Maria wondered what it would feel like to wear clothes like that and go to parties where everything was so beautiful. The party got louder as more people came. Maria could hear laughing and talking through the walls. Sometimes people came to the kitchen to ask for more drinks or food, and Maria would help get whatever they needed. The people were polite to her, but they looked through her like she was not really there. Maria was used to this. Rich people did not usually see cleaning ladies as real people. Around 9 o'clock, Mr. Sterling came to the kitchen. Maria had been washing dishes when he walked in with 3 other men. All of them had drinks in their hands, and they looked like They had been drinking for a while. Mr. Sterling was talking louder than usual, and his face was red. The other men were laughing at everything he said. "This is her," Mr. Sterling said, pointing at Maria. "This is my cleaning lady I was telling you about." The other men looked at Maria like she was something interesting they had found. Maria dried her hands on her apron and wondered why Mr. Sterling was showing her to his friends. "She is the one who was looking at my piano," Mr. Sterling said with that same mean smile Maria remembered from weeks ago. "I caught her staring at it like she had never seen anything so fancy before." The men laughed, and one of them said something about how cleaning ladies probably thought pianos were just fancy furniture. "I have an idea," Mr. Sterling said, and his smile got bigger. "Why don't we bring her out to play something for everyone? It would be so funny to watch her try to figure out how a real piano works." The other men thought this was the funniest thing they had ever heard. They started laughing so hard one of them almost dropped his drink. Maria felt her heart start beating faster. She did not want to go out there in front of all those fancy people. She just wanted to finish her work and go home to her little apartment where no one would stare at her or laugh at her. "Please, sir," she said quietly, "I do not know how to play piano. I should stay here and finish the dishes." But Mr. Sterling was not listening to her. He had already decided this would be his entertainment for the night. "Nonsense," he said. "I insist. My guests would love to see this. It will be the highlight of the evening." He told one of his friends to go tell everyone in the main hall to gather around the piano because they were about to have a special show. Maria tried again to say she did not want to do this, but Mr. Sterling just waved his hand like her words did not matter. He told her to come with him right now. The other men were still laughing and making jokes about what would happen when Maria tried to play. One of them said she would probably just bang on the keys like a little child. Another one said she might break something because she would not know how to be careful with such an expensive piano. Mr. Sterling led Maria out of the kitchen and through the halls toward the main room. Maria's hands were shaking and she felt sick to her stomach. All those fancy people were going to stare at her and laugh at her. She thought about Sofia at college and how proud her daughter was that Maria worked hard to pay for school. Maria did not want to embarrass herself, but she also could not lose this job. When they got to the main hall, Maria could see that all the party guests were already waiting. There were maybe 30 people standing around the piano with their drinks and fancy clothes. They were all talking and laughing like they were excited to see something funny happen. Maria had never felt so small and scared in her whole life. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mr. Sterling said in a loud voice, "I want you to meet my cleaning lady. She has been very interested in my piano, so I thought you might enjoy watching her give it a try." Everyone started clapping, but Maria could tell they were not clapping because they thought she would do well. They were clapping because they thought it would be funny to watch her fail. Maria looked at all the faces staring at her. Some of them were smiling, but not in a nice way. Others looked like they were trying not to laugh already. She looked at the piano sitting there so big and beautiful and perfect. She thought about all the time she had stopped to look at it during these past weeks. She thought about Mr. Sterling's mean comments and how he had talked about her like she was stupid. Then Maria thought about something else. She thought about Sofia and how hard they had both worked to get where they were. She thought about all the things people did not know about her and all the things they would never guess. She looked at Mr. Sterling with his smug face waiting for her to embarrass herself in front of all his rich friends. Maria walked slowly toward the piano. Her heart was still beating fast, but now it was not just from being scared. She sat down on the piano bench and looked at the keys. They were just as beautiful as she had imagined. She could feel everyone watching her and waiting for her to make a fool of herself. Mr. Sterling was standing right behind her, making quiet comments to his friends about how this was going to be hilarious. Maria put her hands above the keys and took a deep breath. She could feel the room get quiet as everyone waited to see what would happen next. Maria's fingers touched the keys and something magical happened. The first note that came out was perfect and clear. It filled the whole room like a bell ringing in a quiet church. Maria felt the familiar feeling of the smooth keys under her fingertips, and suddenly she was not scared anymore. She was home. The room was completely quiet now. All the talking and laughing had stopped. Maria could feel everyone staring at her, but she did not care anymore. She pressed another key and then another. The notes flowed together like water running down a hill, beautiful and smooth and perfect. Then Maria began to play for real. Her fingers moved across the keys like they were dancing. The music that came out was not simple music that anyone could play. It was complex and beautiful music that only someone who really knew how to play piano could make. Each note was exactly right, and they all fit together like pieces of a puzzle. Mr. Sterling's mouth fell open. He had been standing behind Maria, waiting for her to embarrass herself by banging on the keys like a child. Instead, he was hearing music that was more beautiful than anything he had ever heard at his fancy parties. His face went from smug and happy to confused, and then to something that looked like fear. The other guests were just as shocked. The woman in the red dress who had been laughing the loudest was now standing with her hand over her mouth. The man who had joked about Maria breaking the piano was staring like he could not believe what he was hearing. Everyone in the room had expected to laugh at Maria, and instead they were listening to music that made them feel like they were in a real concert hall. Maria played a piece that she had learned many years ago. Her fingers remembered every note, even though she had not played it in a long time. The music was sad and beautiful at the same time. It told a story without using any words. Some parts were soft like a whisper, and other parts were strong like thunder. Maria made the piano sing and cry and laugh all at once. As she played, Maria forgot about everything else. She forgot about the fancy people watching her. She forgot about Mr. Sterling and his mean smile. She forgot about being a cleaning lady who was supposed to be embarrassed. She was just Maria playing piano, and for these few minutes that was all that mattered in the world. The music got more complex as Maria played. Her left hand played deep low notes that sounded like the foundation of a building, while her right hand played high notes that danced on top like birds flying. Sometimes both hands played together in perfect harmony, and sometimes they played different melodies that wove together like two voices singing. One of the guests was a woman named Mrs. Henderson, who went to the symphony every month. She knew good music when she heard it, and she knew that what Maria was playing was not just good but extraordinary. Mrs. Henderson had heard professional pianists play this same piece, and none of them had played it as beautifully as Maria was playing it right now. Mr. Sterling looked around at his guests and saw that they were all completely focused on Maria and the music. No one was laughing anymore. No one was making jokes. They were all listening like they were in church or at a funeral or at the most important concert of their lives. This was not what Mr. Sterling had planned at all. The music continued, and Maria's fingers never missed a note. She played parts that were so difficult that most people who tried to learn piano would never be able to play them. But Maria's fingers moved like they were born to touch these keys. Every note was clear and perfect and exactly where it should be. Some of the guests started to whisper to each other, but they whispered very quietly so they would not disturb the music. "How is this possible?" one man asked his wife. "She's just a cleaning lady." His wife shushed him because she did not want to miss any of the beautiful music. Another woman whispered to her husband, "I have never heard anyone play like this except at the finest concert halls in the world." Her husband nodded because he was thinking the same thing. This was not the music of someone who had just learned to play piano. This was the music of someone who had spent years and years learning to play at the highest level. Maria reached the most difficult part of the piece. This was the part where most pianists would slow down or make mistakes because it was so hard to play. But Maria did not slow down. Her fingers moved even faster and more gracefully. The music became like a storm with notes flying everywhere, but every single one was exactly right. Mr. Sterling felt his face getting red, but now it was not from drinking. It was from embarrassment. He had brought Maria out here to make fun of her, and instead she was making him look like a fool. His guests were not laughing at Maria. If anything, they seemed to be looking at him with questions in their eyes, like they were wondering why he had tried to embarrass someone so talented. The beautiful music filled every corner of the big room. It bounced off the walls and the ceiling and came back even more beautiful than before. Maria made the piano sound like a whole orchestra with just her two hands. Sometimes it sounded like violins singing, and sometimes like drums beating, and sometimes like a whole choir of angels. As Maria played, she felt tears coming to her eyes, but she did not stop. She had not played piano like this in so many years. She had almost forgotten how good it felt to make music that was truly beautiful. For just these few minutes, she was not Maria the cleaning lady who worked 3 jobs to pay for her daughter's college. She was Maria the pianist who could make magic with her fingers. The piece was almost over now. Maria played the final section, which started soft and quiet like a lullaby and then built up to a powerful ending that made the whole room shake. Her fingers flew across the keys one last time, hitting every note with perfect timing and perfect feeling. When Maria played the final chord, the room was completely silent. She lifted her hands from the keys and sat very still. She could hear her own heart beating, and she could hear the clock ticking on the wall, but no one in the room was making any sound at all. Then something happened that Maria had not expected. One person started clapping, then another person joined in. Then everyone in the room was clapping as loud as they could. But this was not the kind of clapping people do when they think something is funny. This was the kind of clapping people do when they have just heard something truly amazing. The clapping went on for a long time. Maria sat at the piano bench with her head down, trying to catch her breath. She could not believe what had just happened. She had not played piano like that in 15 years, and her fingers still remembered everything perfectly. The music had felt so good and so right, but now she was scared about what would happen next. When the clapping finally stopped, the room was still very quiet. Everyone was looking at Maria, but now they were looking at her in a completely different way. Before, they had looked at her like she was just a cleaning lady who did not matter. Now they were looking at her like she was someone very special and important. A woman in a blue dress walked slowly toward the piano. She was an older woman with gray hair and kind eyes. Maria had seen her at other parties but had never spoken to her. The woman stopped right in front of Maria and looked at her, very carefully, like she was trying to remember something. "Excuse me," the woman said in a soft voice. "I have to ask you something, and I hope you will not think I am crazy." Maria looked up at her and nodded. "What is your full name?" the woman asked. "Maria Gonzalez," Maria answered quietly. She was not sure why this woman was asking her this question. The woman's eyes got very wide and she put her hand over her heart. "Oh my goodness," she whispered. "I knew it. I knew I recognized that playing." She turned to face the other guests and spoke in a louder voice. "Do any of you know who this woman is?" Everyone shook their heads. They all looked confused. Mr. Sterling was still standing in the back of the room with his face red and angry. He did not like that his joke had turned into something that made him look bad. "This is Maria Gonzalez," the woman said. "She used to be Maria Rodriguez before she got married. 15 years ago, she was the principal pianist for the Madrid Symphony Orchestra. She was one of the most talented young pianists in all of Europe." The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Everyone was staring at Maria with their mouths open. They could not believe that the woman they had thought was just a cleaning lady was actually a famous musician. "I remember reading about you in the newspapers," the woman continued. "You were supposed to play at Carnegie Hall in New York. Everyone said you were going to be one of the greatest pianists in the world. Then you just disappeared and no one knew what happened to you." Maria felt tears starting to come to her eyes. Again, she had hoped that no one would ever recognize her. She had tried so hard to forget about that part of her life. "That was a long time ago," she said very quietly. "What happened?" Another guest asked, "Why did you stop playing?" Maria looked around at all the faces staring at her. These people had come here to have fun at a party, and now they were all asking her about the worst time in her life. She did not want to talk about it, but she could see that they were not going to let her leave without telling them something. "My husband got very sick," Maria said slowly. He had cancer, and we spent everything we had trying to make him better. All our money went to doctors and hospitals. I had to stop playing music so I could take care of him and work to pay the bills. The room was completely silent. Everyone was listening to every word Maria said. He died when my daughter was 7 years old, Maria continued. We had no money left, and I owed the hospital more money than I could ever pay. I sold my piano and everything else we owned, but it was not enough. I decided to come to America to start over. I thought maybe here I could make enough money to take care of my daughter and give her a good life. But why did you not go back to playing music? Mrs. Henderson asked. You are so talented, you could have played with any orchestra in the world. Maria smiled sadly. When you have not played for so long, it is very hard to go back. And I was busy working and taking care of Sophia. She needed me to be her mother, not a musician. I worked cleaning houses and offices and restaurants. Any job I could find to pay the bills and save money for her college. Sophia is your daughter? The woman in the blue dress asked. Yes, Maria said, and for the first time that night she smiled a real smile. She is studying to be a teacher. She is very smart and works very hard. She will graduate next year, and then she can have the good life that I always wanted her to have. Mr. Sterling finally walked over to where Maria was sitting. His face was not red anymore, but he looked very uncomfortable. All his guests were looking at him like they wanted to know why he had tried to embarrass such an amazing woman. I did not know, he said quietly. I had no idea that you were a professional musician. You did not ask, Maria said simply. You just saw a cleaning lady and decided that was all I could ever be. One of the men who had been laughing earlier stepped forward. Mrs. Gonzalez, he said. I own 3 music schools here in the city. I would be honored if you would consider teaching. For me, we need someone with your talent and experience. I own a concert hall downtown, another guest said. We would love to have you perform for us. I think people would be amazed to hear you play. More and more guests started talking at once. They all wanted to help Maria get back into music. One woman knew a music agent who could help her get jobs playing at concerts. Another man said his wife worked for a recording company that would probably love to work with Maria. Maria listened to all these offers and felt overwhelmed. These people were being very kind to her, but she was not sure she was ready to go back to the music world. She had been Maria the cleaning lady for so long that she had almost forgotten she had ever been Maria the pianist. Thank you all very much, Maria said, standing up from the piano bench. You are all being very kind to me. But I need some time to think about all of this. This is all very surprising for me. Mrs. Henderson walked over and took Maria's hand. Of course you need time to think, she said kindly. But please do not take too long. The world needs to hear your beautiful music again. Maria nodded and started to walk back toward the kitchen. She needed to finish her work and go home. She needed to think about everything that had just happened. As she walked away, she could hear all the guests talking excitedly about her playing and about how amazing it was that Mr. Sterling's cleaning lady was actually a famous musician. Mr. Sterling watched her go and felt very ashamed of himself. He had learned something important tonight about not judging people before you really knew who they were. Maria went back to the kitchen and tried to finish her work, but her hands were shaking. She could not stop thinking about what had just happened in the main hall. After 15 years of keeping her past secret, someone had recognized her. Now, everyone knew that she used to be a famous pianist, and she did not know how to feel about it. The party continued, but it was different now. Instead of laughing and making jokes, the guests were talking quietly about Maria and her music. Some of them came to the kitchen to thank her for playing such beautiful music. Others asked her questions about her life as a professional musician. Maria was polite to everyone, but inside she felt confused and scared when the party finally ended and all the guests went home. Maria stayed to help clean up. She washed all the dishes and put away all the fancy plates and glasses. She worked slowly because she was thinking about all the things that had happened tonight. Her whole life had changed in just a few minutes at the piano. Mr. Sterling came to the kitchen while Maria was finishing the last of the cleaning, he looked very different from how he had looked earlier. Before he had seemed mean and proud and sure of himself. Now he looked embarrassed and sorry. He stood in the doorway for a long time before he said anything. "Maria," he finally said, "I owe you an apology. What I did tonight was wrong. I tried to embarrass you in front of my friends, and instead you showed all of us something truly beautiful. I'm sorry for the way I treated you." Maria stopped washing dishes and looked at him. She had not expected him to say sorry. Most rich people she had worked for never said sorry for anything. "Thank you, Mr. Sterling," she said quietly. "I have been thinking about what happened tonight," Mr. Sterling continued. "You are clearly very talented, and you should not be working as a cleaning lady. If you want, I can help you get back into the music world. I know a lot of people who could help you find work as a musician." Maria dried her hands on her apron and thought about what he was saying. "I appreciate that, Mr. Sterling, but I am not sure I am ready for that. I have been away from music for a very long time. I do not know if I could do it anymore." "Are you kidding?" Mr. Sterling said. "Did you hear how you played tonight? You were incredible. My guests have been to concerts all over the world, and they all said you were as good as any pianist they have ever heard." Maria felt a little proud when she heard this, but she was still scared. "What about Sophia? She is still in college, and I need to keep working to pay for her school. I cannot take chances with jobs that might not work out." Mr. Sterling nodded. "I understand. But what if I told you that Mrs. Henderson already called her friend who owns the biggest music school in the city? He wants to offer you a job teaching piano? The pay would be much better than what you make cleaning houses, and you would only have to work during the day. You could still have time for other things if you needed them." This made Maria feel a little better. Teaching piano did sound like something she could do. She had always been good at helping other people learn music. And if the pay was better than cleaning houses, it would mean she could work fewer hours and still take care of Sophia. "There is something else," Mr. Sterling said. "Mrs. Chun, who was at the party tonight, owns the downtown concert hall. She wants you to give a concert there next month. She thinks a lot of people would come to hear you play. She said she would pay you very well for just one performance." Maria's heart started beating fast when she heard this. The idea of playing in front of hundreds of people made her nervous, but it also made her excited. She had forgotten how much she loved performing and sharing beautiful music with other people. "I do not know if I remember enough pieces to do a whole concert," Maria said. "I think you would be surprised at how much you remember," Mr. Sterling said with a smile. "Tonight you played one of the most difficult pieces ever written, and you did not miss a single note. If you can do that, you can do anything." Maria thought about this for a few minutes. Maybe Mr. Sterling was right. Maybe she did remember more than she thought she did. "Can I think about it for a few days?" she asked. "Of course," Mr. Sterling said. "Take all the time you need. But I hope you will say yes. The world needs to hear your music again." 3 weeks later, Maria stood backstage at the downtown concert hall. She was wearing a beautiful black dress that Mrs. Chun had bought for her. Her hair was done in a fancy style, and she was wearing makeup that made her look like the professional musician she used to be. Through the curtain, she could hear hundreds of people talking and waiting for the concert to start. Sophia was sitting in the front row with tears of pride in her eyes. She had never heard her mother play piano before, and she could not wait to see what everyone was so excited about. Next to Sophia sat Mrs. Henderson and many of the other people from Mr. Sterling's party. They had all bought tickets as soon as they heard Maria was going to perform. Mr. Sterling was there too, sitting near the back. He felt proud that he had been able to help Maria get back to doing what she loved. He also felt ashamed that he had almost missed seeing how special she was because he had judged her by her job instead of by who she really was when it was time. Maria walked out onto the stage. The lights were bright and warm, and the piano looked beautiful under the spotlights. As she sat down at the piano bench, she felt all her nervousness go away. This was where she belonged. This was what she was meant to do. Maria began to play, and the beautiful music filled the concert hall. Every person in the audience sat quietly and listened to the amazing sounds she was making. Some people cried because the music was so beautiful. Others smiled because they could feel how happy Maria was to be playing again. When the concert was over, the audience clapped and cheered for a long time. Maria stood up and bowed and felt more happy than she had felt in 15 years. She looked out at all the people who had come to hear her play, and she saw Sophia clapping harder than anyone else. After the concert, Maria hugged her daughter tight. "I am so proud of you, Mama," Sophia said. "I never knew you could do something so amazing." "I forgot for a while too," Maria said with a smile. "But sometimes life gives you a second chance to remember who you really are." Maria kept her job teaching at the music school and gave concerts once a month at Mrs. Chun's hall. She was happier than she had been in many years, and Sophia was proud to tell everyone that her mother was a famous pianist. Mr. Sterling learned to treat all his workers with respect, and he never again judged anyone by their job or their appearance. And sometimes when Maria was teaching her students, she would think about how one night at a piano had changed everything and brought her back to the life she was meant to live.